Cubs have worked on the bullpen here lately, and it's been a topic of conversation for us. We're going to get into it with a more deep dive about the newest member of the bullpen and a guy that you remember from the 2016 season as he tries to make the squad. Welcome to the Cubs Baseball Channel. Thanks for hanging out with us here. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up and get in that comment section. Let's get this thing started. Go Cubs, go! With the Cubs, Mr. Chad Anderson, I'm Mick Gillispie. At This Chad Is Real, at Broadcaster Mick on the socials. And Chad, despite how you pronounce it, the Cubs coming in strong yesterday as they add reliever right-hander Hector Neris. And this is a guy, for some reason, that I want to put a V in his name. And I want to talk about that in a second, but I do apologize for the pronunciation, but I don't apologize for what the Cubs are getting because this guy 71 games last year and he had a 1.71 ERA.
Do you have the aluminum problem? Like in the aluminum?
I don't know,
it's
man.
all good, man. It's all good. So Hector Neris, big addition for the Chicago Cubs. I mean, they were rumored around, a couple of other relievers, middle relievers. Alzolay is going to get the go as the man in the closer's role. Neris should be the setup guy. He had an amazing year with the Houston Astros. I really like the setup too because the Cubs have a club option on him unless he makes, I think it's 60 appearances. You can fact check me on that one. But
yeah, no, that's it. 60.
Yeah. Once he makes 60, it becomes a player option. But I like the deal. I like the deal from both sides. Gives the Cubs a solid arm who had a sub-2 ERA last year. And the Cubs, Mick, while we've been talking about pieces and a lot of them have been focused on players like Ohtani and Bellinger and starting pitching and whatnot, this is a team whose bullpen last year was very middle of the road. And you saw the wear and tear in September. The bullpen started to let down a little bit. You had some tired arms. You had some injuries. Michael Fulmer wasn't the guy you probably expected throughout the entire year. He had flashes. Who was the other one? Boxberger, right? Was injured all year.
Yeah.
So there were just some pieces missing or injuries or fatigued arms. This is going to be a nice one to go in that 8th inning setup role to get Adbert Alzolay. I'll struggle with that pronunciation into the 9th inning.
All right, a couple things. First off, I have decided normally in broadcasting, when you F something up, you just keep going, right? Because it's like, hey, only 25% of the people know. And then when you say it, everybody knows. But I'm going to make this a fun thing. You guys will tell me, hey, look, it's not Nervous, it's Naris, or it's Neris, right? You'll give me the correct pronunciation. I love that. Some of you guys are like, hey, man, I love you, Mick, but you might want to change this up. My son's autistic. Every time I mess up a name, and it has to be a legitimate mess up, I'm going to put $10 into the autistic charity. I'm going to pick one and go with it just because it's fun. And I like laughing at myself.
Jar.
Well, yeah, it's the square jar. Yeah. And look, it drives me nuts because I don't know why. Like, there's just certain names and sounds that for all of us, I guess, give you an issue. And I look at that and it just doesn't say Neris to me. I don't know why, but we'll get it right. It's been fun, like learning how to say Imanaga, like over the couple of months before he signed. And then no one even had this on their radar, but thank you guys in the comment section. And I really appreciate it. And, yesterday I was concerned about the internet here at the hotel. And I thought, well, I should have been worried about how to say Neris. Made it a lot harder. But we're going to do that just out of fun. And then somebody got in there and they're like, you were, I don't know, the Cubs Locked On channel had it at 9 and you had it at this time. I'm not competing, Chad, and you aren't either. We're not competing with Locked On Cubs. We actually like Locked On Cubs, and all of the other channels on YouTube that covered the Cubs. It's not like the old late night show where David Letterman and Jay Leno are going at it head to head. It's really
right.
This platform is just a spot where we can get together and talk about the Cubs. And I'm just kind of trying to figure out a way to pass on my 40 years of Cubdom and 20 years working with the organization. So that's the angle I'm coming at it from. But I love it when I hear what fans say and get their perspective. And I mean that. And I like all the different channels and kind of where they come in from their angle. But I was in the car yesterday for 10 hours, like 10 straight hours. Like I left at 3 a.m. and I got it to Boca at like 1 something, almost 2 o'clock. So when this broke, like the last thing I was thinking was, okay, I'm not pulling over at 9 in the morning to try to figure out how to say Neris.
Yeah, it is hard. Like I'll just be honest. Sometimes, guys, it's hard to just go flip the camera on by walking upstairs because you're tired from doing something else. So a 10-hour drive, that's a lot. But the other thing you got to be careful with when you have these channels or when you're in a little more, let's call it traditional journalism, like you're writing for a paper or doing columns or for ESPN or something like that. Sources and being first is great, but you have to be careful with that because you could be first and correct 20 times, but when you're first and you're wrong once, everybody remembers the once. Right. And like Mick said, like we're not here to bash other channels or compete against them or try to outdo them necessarily. This is an outlet. Like Mick's been with the organization forever. I've been an avid Cub fan since I can remember, because it's how my mom used to distract me back in the 80s, was stick me in front of the TV to watch WGN, Harry Carey, Steve Stone at 1:20 every day.
Uncle Steve.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, that was it. And you fall in love with the Cubs and you just follow it. Plus, I'm a baseball lover. Like I truly love baseball. It's my favorite sport. I played it the most growing up. So yeah, when we do these things and do these shows and whatnot, we're literally just more guys hanging out talking with you. And that's why we like engagement, because we'd rather talk to you rather than just sit here and banter to each other all the time. We actually enjoy the comments and engagement and hanging out and getting some different opinions. I love opinions because if Mick and I agree on everything and never have a differing opinion and we're always right, it's going to be a pretty boring show. So we want you guys to be interjecting, as often as possible and sharing your thoughts with us. But going back to the bullpen, again, you get in the playoffs, Mick, this is a piece. I said it the other day when we were recording. This is a piece. Neris comes from the Astros. Well, we know how good the Astros have been. And so with Neris now on the Cubs roster, he helps that bullpen from more than just numbers. He helps them in the situation of, this is what it's like. This is the pressure cooker. These are the playoffs. This is what the expectations are. This is what we've got to do. And it really does bolster that bullpen that was really good at times for the Cubs. It's just more inconsistent along with the injuries. So I think this is a great piece.
One of the best sites in baseball. I mean, when you're trying to like figure out different stuff as far as what guys do, is baseballsavant.com, right? And I'm going to put this up there. I'm going to share this because I think this is really a cool tab. But these are the pitches that Hector throws, right? So you're talking about 4-seam fastball 51.7% of the time, right? Then he comes back with his split finger. So think 4 seams, you guys know it's the pitch that's up here. And then the split finger, a lot of times is going to be kind of, you're going to kind of hit the corners with that. I would say more of a lower pitch, but not, right. And then a sinker, which he throws, which is definitely down in the zone. Another pitch you throw hard, and that's 15%. And then a slider, which he doesn't throw that much, 3.9%. Does that surprise you at all that you're talking about a guy that throws like different style fastballs?
Yeah, that's really all it is, right? Because a lot of pitchers, your splitters and your sinkers really don't change velocity a ton. The splitter is a lot of time, and the sinker too. I mean, it's just like you said, it's different kinds of fastballs, and you're trying to keep it with similar arm angles and a similar look, but just with a different effect on the baseball. And as it gets to the plate, it does something obviously different, which confuses the hitters and gets them off balance. So yeah, I mean, the slider, what is that? You said it 3.9%.
Yeah. So it's not a lot.
Yeah. So not a huge, and no change up, not a lot of like massive change in speeds or anything. Just trying to keep the ball moving, not have it on a flat plane, keep the hitters guessing, and get in a situation where, you try to just keep that consistent arm angle. Now, one thing the Cubs fans have to keep in mind here is last year was really his best year ever. Okay. So the Cubs, the only thing that does, like, if you want to, look at it as glass half empty, is that he's coming off the best year ever that he's had from an ERA standpoint. He's early in his career, he was in the 2s and barely over 3 a couple of times, and then sub 3 another time in 2019. But then he had a couple of, I won't say rough patches, but with the Phillies, he was over 4 in the COVID year. So small sample there. And then back in the 3s in 21 and 22 before having his best year ever in 71 appearances last year at a 1.71 ERA. So sometimes expectations get mismanaged, and that would be the only, like I said, I love the signing, but if you want to do a pros and cons list, the glass half empty side of me goes, I hate buying someone off of their best year ever, because then it gets a little lopsided on what you're expecting all year long.
Yeah, and well, that's always a risk you're going to take. But I mean, I would rather get somebody coming off a great year than off of a bad year. The thing that maybe sticks out to me, though, is that his velocity dropped a little bit. It's 93 rather than his first 9 seasons. He was like 94 plus. He also had a walk rate that was, over 11%, like almost 11.5%. But, at the same time, I mean, results are results. I mean, when you can go out and throw 71 games and go 6-3 and have a 1.71 ERA, it doesn't matter how hard you throw. I can remember Greg Maddux talking about movement over velocity. Right. You want movement over velocity, and, location's great, but movement over location too. I mean, you want to move the ball around, and obviously you got to throw strikes. But it's not like him throwing a tick slower really worked against him. I mean, maybe part of it's getting older, but could be part of it too. Could be that he's got a better idea of what it takes to get outs.
Yeah. I mean, and that's so spot on, because baseball kind of got to this, and it still is, that's why I have such a soft spot in my heart for Kyle Hendricks, is because baseball is the game where everybody just salivates over the Max Scherzers and the Justin Verlanders and the Aroldis Chapmans and the guys who come in and throw it upper 90s, break 100, multiple times in an outing, and just kind of beat you down, right? They just let it rip like a little league coach, rock and fire, right? Like that's what those guys, and that's what baseball kind of got built on recently. And so when you can come in and do what Hendricks does at a high level, like, to me, that is something so sexy about baseball. When you can take that approach and dominate hitters, because you're just able to move the ball and keep them guessing and change directions and speeds. It's another reason why, I mean, I don't know that he's going to make a comeback. He wants to Major League Baseball one more year, he says, but 46-year-old Fernando Rodney, remember, like, he was like a changeup specialist, right? Like, he could just locate and keep you off balance. And I loved that. Not what you see traditionally out of a closer's role, or a late innings guy a lot of times, but something to keep an eye on. I do love that.
Yeah, me too. All right, you Junior, aka CJ. That's what I know him as. CJ Edwards. I've known him since he was a Cub, and I love him. I mean, great personality, really nice guy. The string bean slinger, although he's even a thinner guy, still not quite as thin as when we first saw him. I mean, he's like, I think, You talk about a guy drafted at the very end of the draft. He was playing in like pickup leagues when he was scouted. He ends up helping the Cubs win the World Series. Had that issue where, he had to kind of change some of the way that he threw the baseball because he was balking, like where you couldn't kind of hop on the mound. It's really weird. And now he's back on a minor league deal, which means that he's got to make the team or he'll start the year in Iowa. But it's a good bet for him because when I look at the Cubs bullpen, I could see there being a spot for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there is. And remember, he was one of those guys that I don't know what happened, what went wrong. Do you think, Mick, like you've been around him, you've been around a lot of the players over their journey through the Cubs. Like, was he in a spot where it just like he became the guy quietly? Does that make sense? Like he kind of got pushed into a little bit of a spotlight where he was there and we saw the progression and how much better he was getting year after year after year. And at least in my opinion, he kind of got to a point where it was like, man, CJ, that's a guy you don't want to mess with in the bullpen, like, or in the rotation or anywhere. Like he's solid. He is going to be like an arm for the Cubs for a long time. And then it went like, well, like this, and then just fell off the cliff. And you're right. The balking stuff and just some control issues and walks and things like that. I don't know. I don't know if it was just that, if it was a mechanics thing or if it was a spotlight thing, a little more pressure on him, but good to see him back. I hope it pans out. I do think it's a great bet for the Cubs.
Yeah, I think it came down to they I don't know if it was a rule change or not, but I remember being at spring training and watching him, and they had this rule where you couldn't kind of bounce on the mound, and he would bounce, and I remember us watching it, and they're like, okay, now all of a sudden they're going to start, really policing that, and then once you start getting in your head as far as like your delivery goes, and and then the next thing you know, he's like off. And I think I said that they released him. Maybe they traded him to
it's Padres, wasn't it?
The Padres, yeah. And then, and then all of a sudden it was like he was different places and in the minor leagues and then back to the big leagues. But the last couple of years with the Nationals, he actually did really well, and I'm just so excited about the possibility of him coming back in. He's another guy, four-seam fastball, changeup, curveball, sinker. He probably could throw about 7 other pitches if he really wanted to. But still one of the great stories. And it would be nice to have another one of those 2016 Cubs on the team. I mean, it's really kind of crazy to think that Kyle Hendricks is the only guy that's there from the championship.
Didn't Madden get thrown out once or twice because they were trying to figure out what was wrong with the delivery? Because, like you said, they kept picking on him. I felt like Joe got tossed or something early in a season because it was one of those things like the Cubs asked about it and they were being told one thing and then it was still getting called or he was still getting, whatever the case was during the games. I just feel like I remember Joe getting tossed, but of course,
could be.
Joe got tossed more than once, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
Well, it's been a while now. I mean, that sounds like it could have happened. I don't remember that, but I do remember just like, sitting there with Jim DeShays and him, JD kind of looking at it and going, man, the way that they're policing this now and, knowing that there was going to have to be some changes made into his delivery. But you know what? I'm so glad that the Cubs are kind of being creative with some of these guys in the bullpen. And you look at the bullpen. You said they were 13th last year,
and ERA.
An ERA, right? So that's that's not the worst by far, but that's not the Yankees either. But you got to hope that Adbert Alzolay comes back, right? And he's got to be effective, and he's got to take that closer spot. Neris has a chance to help out there. He's been a closer before, so if something happens, you can slide him in. You hope that Julian Merriweather's able to come back and produce like he did last year. Mark Leiter Jr. was so good out of the bullpen last year. And I'm hoping, and I talked about this the other day, I'm hoping that you get something from Daniel Palencia, who I think has the potential to be a really good back-end guy with the velocity that he throws with. And then Luke Little, who had good numbers, 3-1 record and a 3.45 ERA, but I feel like he's got to be one of these guys who has more control. The walks have got to come down. The wild pitches, and even the pass balls when you're on the mound sometimes are your fault. But I look at him and I go, man, he's got star potential as well. And what do you do with Javier Assad? I think the Cubs, though, could still add someone else to the bullpen. So that's my thoughts on the bullpen. What are yours?
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I was saying. I mean, it just felt like, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but with those arms, like you said, some expectations were met, and then we've talked about some that weren't, and the injuries and the exhausted arms and the fatigue and down the stretch. I mean, you didn't have Alzolay there for a little while, and the Cubs were even throwing Marcus Stroman into the bullpen to try to bandage it up, just kind of find a spot where you could get some good arms and quality arms in the right innings. So it's something that it does have a role in the regular season, obviously, because but the 13th ranked bullpen can be a playoff contender. The thing that the Cubs are going to need is, if they're going to compete for the division and go down the stretch or go into the wild card and then get into October baseball, they're going to need a solid bullpen to have a chance to compete. Because once you get into October, that's when all these pieces and signings, while they may not be like major marquee home run type, oh yeah, look at what we did kind of plays in the offseason, they pay off in October. So I'm with you. And there are a couple of those guys, Leiter, Assad, who had a great run as a starter for the Cubs towards the end of last year. And now you add Neris, you have Alzolay. There's a lot of good names and good arms in there. We kind of pick on Quas. I hope he does better this year for two reasons. One, just because we want the Cubs to have a successful bullpen. Two, because I want to feel like there's a little bit of return from the Nelson Velasquez trade, because I have a feeling, I got a really bad feeling we're going to miss Nelson down the road. But yeah, but good addition for the Cubs. So hopefully they can, put this stuff together and more just stay healthy and stay strong, spread the innings around and the pitch counts around, so that you're not worn out by the time September gets here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on the Cubs Baseball Channel. Today's video brought to you in part by the Tennessee Smokies, their team store, smokiesbaseball.com/team store, and Chad Anderson at chadwickanderson.com.
Yeah, appreciate it. Visit that website, chadwickanderson.com. Scan the QR code if you'd like to chat. We're doing a ton of purchases right now. Ever since January 1, all of a sudden, everybody's ready to buy a house once we got into that new year. And then refinances are way, way up from where they were. People paying off tons of debt. Talked to somebody Friday. I've told you guys stories. Talked to someone Friday, though, who's paying off $90,000 of credit card debt, and her house payment is going to stay the same. I mean, just unbelievable what she's saving. So keep all those in mind. Reach out if you want me to take a look at your specific personal scenario. We can chat about it offline.
All right. For Chad Anderson, I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Cubs Baseball Channel, and we will talk to you guys again really soon. Go Cubs!